The diplomatic mission gone wrong. The shuttle descended through the crimson atmosphere of Catherine Prime, its hull shimmering against the alien sky. Captain Marcus Stone gripped the armrest of his seat, watching the reptilian homeworld grow larger. Through the viewport, red deserts stretched endlessly below, broken only by towering spires of black stone that housed the Catherine civilization. Nervous, Captain, Dr. Elena Vasquez asked from the seat beside him. Her dark hair was pulled back in a professional bun, but a few rebellious strands framed her face. As the mission's xenobiologist, she had spent months preparing for this first contact. Marcus turned to look at her, noting how her brown eyes sparkled with excitement rather than fear. "Just focused," he replied, though his stomach tightened as the shuttle approached the landing platform. First contact with a species this advanced, it could change everything for humanity. Ambassador William Cross, a silver-haired diplomat with decades of experience, leaned forward from his position across the aisle. "The Catherine have agreed to this meeting, which is promising. Their technology surpasses ours in many areas, particularly their energy weapons and defensive systems." Elena consulted her tablet, reviewing the briefing materials one final time. "They evolved as apex predators on a world with limited resources. Their society is built around strength and territorial control. We need to project confidence without appearing threatening." The shuttle touched down with a gentle bump on the obsidian landing pad. Through the windows, Marcus could see the welcoming committee, 6 Catherines standing in perfect formation. They were impressive beings, standing nearly 8 feet tall on powerful legs. Their scales shifted from deep green to golden bronze in the alien sunlight, and elaborate crests adorned their heads, indicating their social rank. "Remember the protocol," Ambassador Cross said as he stood and straightened his formal diplomatic robes. "Direct eye contact shows respect in their culture. Avoid sudden movements, and keep your hands visible at all times." The shuttle door opened with a pneumatic hiss, and the hot, dry air of Catherine Prime rushed in. Marcus stepped out first, his hand deliberately kept away from the ceremonial sidearm that all Space Force officers wore. During diplomatic functions, the gravity was slightly heavier than Earth standard, making each step feel weighted with importance. The largest Catherine stepped forward, his scales darker than the others, and his crest marked with silver bands that denoted his high status. This could only be Supreme Commander Vorth, the military leader who had agreed to this historic meeting. "Welcome to Catherine Prime." The translator device worn by a smaller Catherine rendered his words into English. "We extend the ancient greeting of warriors to warriors." Ambassador Cross performed the rehearsed greeting, placing his right hand over his heart and bowing slightly. "The United Earth Federation comes in peace and friendship. We seek knowledge and understanding between our peoples." The ceremony proceeded according to the carefully planned script. The human delegation was escorted toward a massive pyramid-like structure with narrow windows that gleamed like eyes in the red sunlight. Marcus walked behind the ambassador, with Elena at his side, both maintaining the respectful posture they had practiced. Inside the great hall, the temperature was cooler, and the lighting took on a greenish tint that was easier on human eyes. The delegation was seated at a long table, carved from what appeared to be a single piece of dark crystal. Servants brought vessels of steaming liquid that smelled faintly of spices. Unknown to human palates, Ambassador Cross began his prepared speech about Earth's desire for peaceful cooperation and cultural exchange. Marcus listened while simultaneously observing their hosts, noting their body language and reactions. The Catherines seemed attentive, their vertical pupils dilating and contracting as they focused on the ambassador's words. It happened during the 4th minute of the formal address. Supreme Commander Vorth's gaze shifted from the ambassador to Marcus. Their eyes met across the crystal table, and Marcus maintained the contact as he had been instructed, showing respect through steady attention. The effect was immediate and devastating. Vorth's pupils contracted to thin slits, and the breathing passages at the base of his thick neck flared wide. He rose abruptly from his seat, his chair scraping against the stone floor with a sound like grinding bones. The translator struggled to keep up as he barked something in his native language. "Death Hunter," the machine finally produced in its mechanical voice. "Apex eyes." Pack leader sight. The other Catherine reacted instantly, rising to defensive postures. Some reached for weapons concealed within their ceremonial armor. The air in the chamber grew tense, filled with the sound of hissing breaths and clicking claws. Ambassador Cross raised his hands in the universal gesture of peace. "We intend no threat or disrespect. Supreme Commander, please let us continue our discussion." But Vorth was backing away from the table, still staring at Marcus with what could only be described as primal fear. "Your eyes," he hissed, and the translator couldn't mask the horror in his voice. Forward-facing predator eyes, hunting eyes, pack coordination eyes. Elena leaned toward Marcus, her voice barely a whisper. "What's happening?" The briefings never mentioned anything about eye contact being problematic. Marcus kept his gaze lowered now, but the damage was already done. "I don't know," he replied quietly, "but we need to leave now." The situation deteriorated rapidly. More Catherine guards entered the chamber, their weapons drawn, but not yet aimed at the humans. Supreme Commander Vorth continued to back away, speaking rapidly in his own language. The translator device was overwhelmed, producing only fragments. "Ancient enemy, pack hunters, coordinate kill." Ambassador Cross attempted to restore order, but his diplomatic training had not prepared him for the scenario. The careful protocols and cultural preparations meant nothing when faced with what appeared to be an instinctual, almost primitive, reaction from their hosts. "We should return to our shuttle," Elena said, her scientific mind already working to understand what had triggered such a violent response. "This isn't fear of our technology or our intentions. This is something deeper." Marcus stood slowly, careful to keep his movements non-threatening. "Ambassador, we need to evacuate. This situation is beyond salvage." The retreat from the Great Hall became a careful withdrawal. Under the watchful eyes of Catherine guards, Marcus noted something strange as they moved through the corridors. The guards were skilled warriors, their aim precise when they had demonstrated their weapons during the arrival ceremony. Yet now their energy rifles seemed to deliberately miss the humans, firing warning shots that struck the walls beside them rather than finding their targets. They were being herded rather than hunted. Elena clutched her research tablet as they hurried through the pyramid's passages. "This doesn't make sense," she said breathlessly. "They're apex predators themselves. They've conquered other species. What could they possibly fear about us?" "Maybe that's exactly the point," Marcus replied, helping her navigate a steep ramp that led to the exit. "Maybe they recognize something in us that scares them precisely because they are apex predators." The shuttle launch was accomplished under emergency protocols, with the pilot engaging the engines before the landing ramp had fully closed. As Catherine Prime fell away beneath them, Marcus stared out at the alien world, his mind racing with questions. Ambassador Cross slumped in his seat, his diplomatic mission a complete failure. 40 years of preparation, he muttered. Cultural studies, language protocols, gift exchanges. And it all collapsed because of eye contact. Elena was already analyzing what had happened, her scientific training taking over. "It wasn't just eye contact," she said, reviewing her observations. "It was specifically Marcus's eyes." Commander Vorth looked at you and the ambassador without reaction. But when he saw Marcus, the pack leader's sight, Marcus repeated the translator's words. What did that mean? As their shuttle rejoined the human fleet in orbit around Catherine Prime, the implications of the failed first contact began to sink in. Humanity had encountered something unexpected, a species that looked into human eyes and saw not curiosity or intelligence, but something that triggered ancient fears. Elena moved to sit beside Marcus as they prepared for the jump to hyperspace. "We need to understand what happened down there," she said softly. "This can't be an isolated incident. If other species react the same way." Marcus met her gaze, suddenly aware of his own eyes in a way he had never been before. Then humanity might have a much different place in the galaxy than we ever imagined. The stars stretched into lines as they entered hyperspace, carrying them away from Catherine Prime and toward answers that would reshape their understanding of what it meant to be human. Among the stars, the pattern emerges. The research vessel Endeavour drifted silently through the void between star systems, its sleek hull reflecting the distant light of nearby suns. Captain Marcus Stone stood before the main view screen in the ship's primary laboratory, watching data streams flow across multiple displays. 3 weeks had passed since the disaster on Catherine Prime, and the questions still burned in his mind. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked at the central console, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces as she compiled reports from across human space. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders now, freed from the formal constraints of diplomatic protocol. Marcus found himself watching her more often than he cared to admit, drawn by her passionate dedication to solving their mystery. "I've found something," Elena announced, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the ship's systems. "Commander Webb sent me the classified files from our previous first contact missions." Commander Patricia Webb, the stern intelligence officer who had taken over the investigation, looked up from her own workstation. Her gray hair was pulled back severely, and her pale eyes missed nothing. "What kind of pattern are we looking at, Doctor?" Elena transferred her data to the main screen, and Marcus moved closer to study the information. The proximity to Elena made him acutely aware of her presence, the subtle scent of her perfume mixing with the sterile air of the laboratory. 7 previous first contact missions with apex predator species, Elena explained, highlighting entries in the database. The Ravik from the Centauri system, the Thornback hunters of Kepler 442, the Shadowfin pack leaders from the ocean world of Tiamat. Every single encounter followed the same pattern. Marcus leaned over her shoulder to read the reports, their faces inches apart. Initial peaceful contact, followed by sudden fear and retreat, he observed. But the diplomatic teams attributed it to cultural misunderstandings or territorial instincts. "Because they didn't know what to look for," Elena replied, turning. Slightly so their eyes met. For a moment, the scientific discussion faded as Marcus found himself lost in her warm brown gaze. He could see flecks of gold around her pupils, and the way her lashes cast small shadows on her cheeks. Commander Webb cleared her throat. "Breaking the spell, Dr. Vasquez. What specifically triggered these reactions?" Elena turned back to her console, though Marcus noticed the slight flush in her cheeks. In each case, the apex predator species reacted when they made direct eye contact with human team members. The reports describe it as instinctual fear or territorial challenge response. But the common factor is always the same. "Our eyes," Marcus said quietly, touching the corner of his own eye unconsciously. "Something about human eyes terrifies them." The laboratory door slid open with a soft hiss, and Dr. James Morrison entered carrying a steaming cup of coffee and a stack of research tablets. The ship's evolutionary biologist was a thin man with prematurely white hair and an intense manner that made him seem older than his 40 years. "I've been analyzing the evolutionary data Elena requested," Morrison announced, setting his materials on an empty workstation. "The results are fascinating and somewhat disturbing." Elena moved to stand beside Marcus as they gathered around Morrison's display. Their shoulders touched, and Marcus felt a spark of electricity at the contact. The investigation was bringing them closer together in ways that went beyond professional collaboration. "Human eyes are unique among Earth species," Morrison began, calling up comparative anatomy charts. "Most predators have eyes on the sides of their heads for wide peripheral vision. Humans have forward-facing eyes like other apex predators, but with several critical differences." The display showed detailed cross-sections of human eyes compared to those of various Earth predators. "Our white sclera makes our gaze direction obvious to others," Morrison continued. "We can communicate where we're looking without moving our heads. This evolved for pack hunting coordination." Commander Webb studied the data with professional interest. "So human eyes evolved as communication tools for group hunting." "More than that," Elena interjected, her excitement evident in her voice. "They evolved to coordinate multiple hunters against large, dangerous prey. Our ancestors didn't just hunt in packs, they hunted as a unified intelligence." Marcus felt a chill as the implications became clear. So when an alien apex predator looks into human eyes, they see something that their own evolutionary instincts recognize as extremely dangerous. "Exactly," Morrison confirmed. "They see the eyes of a cooperative super predator, a species that doesn't hunt alone, but as a coordinated group with shared intelligence and planning capability. The laboratory fell silent as the team absorbed this revelation. Elena moved closer to Marcus, and he could feel her warmth against his arm. The investigation was revealing uncomfortable truths about humanity's place in the galaxy, but it was also revealing how much he had come to depend on Elena's presence beside him. "There's more," Elena said softly, pulling up additional files. "I've been corresponding with Dr. Sarah Chen on the colony world of New Geneva. She's documented similar reactions from the Christite miners they employ there." "The Christites are apex predators?" Webb asked. Elena corrected. "Their species was nearly driven to extinction by civil wars before humans arrived. We saved them, gave them purpose as miners in the crystal caves they naturally evolved to navigate. But Dr. Chen reports that even now, years after first contact, they still show submissive behavior around humans." Marcus studied the reports. Noting the behavioral patterns, "They recognize us as the dominant predator species. Even though we saved them, their instincts tell them we're dangerous." Elena turned to face him directly, her expression serious but tinged with something else, warmth, perhaps, or admiration for his quick understanding. "It explains so much about our diplomatic difficulties. Every time we encounter an apex predator species, we're essentially announcing ourselves as their greatest potential threat. The question now," Commander Webb interjected, "is what we do with this information. Do we hide our nature? Change our diplomatic protocols?" Morrison shook his head firmly. "You can't hide evolution. These species recognize something fundamental about us, something that goes back millions of years of human development." As the meeting continued into the evening hours, Marcus found himself working closely with Elena, their investigation taking on an intimacy born of shared discovery and late-night research sessions. When Webb and Morrison finally retired to their quarters, Marcus and Elena remained in the laboratory, poring over data by the soft glow of the computer screens. "Marcus," Elena said quietly, looking up from her tablet, "are you frightened by what we're learning about ourselves?" He considered the question carefully, studying her face in the dim light. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I'm more fascinated than frightened, and I'm glad I'm learning it with you." Elena smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her serious features. "I feel the same way. This investigation is changing everything we thought we knew about humanity's place among the stars." "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," Marcus replied, moving closer to her. "Maybe it's time the galaxy knew what humans are really capable of." Their eyes met again, and this time neither looked away. The mystery of human predator recognition was far from solved, but Marcus realized he had found something equally important. In the process, as Elena leaned closer, her hand finding his on the console, he understood that some discoveries were worth any risk. The stars continued their ancient dance outside the laboratory windows, indifferent to the revelations taking place within the research vessel. Humanity was learning uncomfortable truths about its evolutionary legacy, but Marcus Stone was learning something far more personal about the woman beside him and the connection growing between them with each passing day. The Zephyrian revelation, the diplomatic station orbiting Zephyr, hung like a silver jewel against the backdrop of the gas giant's swirling storms. Captain Marcus Stone watched through the observation deck as their shuttle approached the docking bay, his reflection ghosting across the reinforced viewport. Beside him, Dr. Elena Vasquez reviewed her notes one final time, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Remember," Elena said softly, "the Zephyrians have been our allies for 3 years now. If anyone will give us honest answers about the predator recognition phenomenon, it's them." Marcus nodded, though he couldn't shake his nervousness. The Zephyrians were magnificent beings, standing nearly 7 feet tall, with powerful wings that could carry them through their homeworld's violent atmospheric storms. They were apex predators who had learned to work with humans, but the question remained, what had they overcome to reach that cooperation? Ambassador Corvain waited for them in the station's central meeting chamber. His iridescent feathers caught the light as he moved, shifting from deep blue to silver with each gesture. His large, golden eyes tracked their approach with the keen attention of a born hunter. Despite his imposing presence, Marcus had always found Corvain to be thoughtful and diplomatic. Captain Stone, Dr. Vasquez, Corvain greeted them, his voice carrying the melodic quality that made Zephyrian's speech so distinctive. I received your request for this meeting with great interest. It is not often that humans ask about the first days of our contact. Elena stepped forward, her tablet ready to record the conversation. Ambassador, we've discovered a pattern in human first contact missions with apex predator species. We're hoping you can help us understand what really happened when our peoples first met. Corvain's feathers ruffled slightly, a sign of deep thought among his people. You wish to know about the fear, he said simply, the terror that gripped my people when we first looked into human eyes. Marcus felt Elena's hand brush against his as she leaned forward with interest. The touch sent warmth through him, a welcome distraction from the weight of Corvain's words. Terror, Elena asked. The official reports described initial caution and territorial posturing, diplomatic language. Corvain replied with what might have been amusement. Your diplomats were kind enough to soften the truth in their records. But yes, Dr. Vasquez, when my people first encountered humans, our reaction was one of primal terror. The Zephyrian ambassador moved to the large window that looked out over his home world. His wings partially unfurled, casting impressive shadows. Across the chamber floor, we Zephyrians are storm hunters. We dive through the hurricane winds of our world to catch prey that most species cannot even see. We are apex predators who have never known fear of any earthbound creature. Marcus moved closer to Elena, drawn by both her scientific excitement and his own growing protectiveness. But humans made you afraid, not afraid, Corvain corrected, turning to face them directly, terrified. When I first met Captain Harrison, during the initial contact mission, I looked into his eyes and saw something that my ancestors had coded into my very genes to recognize and flee from. Elena's tablet recorded every word as Corvain continued his explanation. Your eyes, Captain Stone, carry the mark of the perfect pack hunter, forward-facing for accuracy, with the white sclera that allows your packmates to track your gaze precisely. But more than that, your pupils dilate and contract with your emotions. Your eyelids can signal complex communications, and your gaze itself can coordinate the actions of multiple hunters simultaneous. We've learned about the pack hunting evolution, Marcus said. But why did it terrify you specifically? Corvain's golden eyes studied Marcus intently. Because my people evolved to hunt alone or in mated pairs at most. We are territorial, competitive, powerful but ultimately individualistic. When we look into human eyes, we see the gaze of a species that has transcended individual hunting to become something far more dangerous. Elena stepped closer to Marcus, her shoulder touching his arm as she focused on Corvain's words. Something more dangerous. How you hunt as a single organism, Corvain explained, his voice carrying a note of awe. Each human is like a finger on a hand, coordinated by shared intelligence, capable of complex strategies, and unified in purpose. To an apex predator evolved for individual combat, humans represent the ultimate evolutionary advantage. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. So when you look at us, you see a species that has evolved beyond your ability to compete with. Precisely. Corvain confirmed. And every apex predator species in the galaxy recognizes this on an instinctual level. Your eyes tell the story of cooperative intelligence, strategic planning, and unified action. These are traits that make humans virtually unstoppable as hunters. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Elena moved even closer to Marcus, and he could feel her warmth against his side. The investigation was revealing uncomfortable truths about humanity, but it was also bringing them together in ways that transcended professional collaboration. But you overcame that fear, Elena observed. The Zephyrians are now our closest allies in this sector. Corvain's feathers shifted to a warmer golden hue. Because we learned something important about humans. Yes, you are the galaxy's ultimate predators, but you are also capable of something equally remarkable. Which is? Marcus asked. Compassion, Corvain replied simply. When the stellar plague threatened to destroy our eggs 3 years ago, humans didn't see an opportunity to eliminate a rival species. You saw beings in need of help, and you provided it without hesitation or demand for compensation. Elena looked up at Marcus, her eyes bright with understanding. So the same traits that make us terrifying predators also make us capable of unprecedented cooperation and empathy. Exactly, Dr. Vasquez. Humans can choose to be protectors instead of predators. This is why the Zephyrians were able to move past our initial fear and become your allies. Marcus found himself studying Elena's face as she processed this information. In the soft light of the chamber, she was beautiful in a way that went beyond mere physical attraction. Her intelligence, her passion for understanding, her dedication to finding truth, these qualities drew him to her more powerfully than any simple chemistry. There's something else, Corvain continued, drawing their attention back to the conversation. The fear response isn't universal among apex predators. Some species, when they recognize humans as ultimate predators, react not with retreat, but with challenge. Challenge, Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew where this was leading. The Drakmari Empire. Corvain said gravely, they are hive-mind insectoids, apex predators who have conquered dozens of star systems. When they encounter humans, they don't flee, they prepare for war. Elena's hand found Marcus's arm, her grip tightening with concern. Are you saying the Drakmari see humans as a threat to be eliminated? I'm saying they see humans as the ultimate rival species. Where we Zephyrians chose cooperation, the Drakmari will choose conflict. It is their nature. As their shuttle prepared to depart the diplomatic station several hours later, Marcus and Elena found themselves alone in the observation lounge. The conversation with Corvain had left them both thoughtful and somewhat shaken. We're not just diplomats or explorers, Elena said quietly, staring out at the stars. We're representatives of a species that every apex predator in the galaxy recognizes as a potential threat. Marcus moved to stand beside her, close enough that their reflections merged in the viewport. Does that frighten you? Elena turned to face him, her expression serious but unafraid. It should, she admitted, but somehow with you here it doesn't. Their eyes met, and Marcus saw something in Elena's gaze that made his heart race. The investigation had brought them together, but this moment felt like something deeper, more personal. When she moved closer, and he reached up to touch her face, it felt as natural as breathing. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, but filled with the promise of something profound. When they finally separated, Marcus knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he wanted to face them with Elena beside him. The stars wheeled silently round them as the shuttle carried them back toward human space, toward answers that would reshape their understanding of humanity's destiny among the cosmos. The ancient enemy returns. The klaxon alarms echoed through the corridors of the research vessel Endeavor, their harsh wail cutting through the peaceful quiet that had settled over the ship. Captain Marcus Stone bolted upright in his quarters, instantly alert as years of military training kicked in. Beside him, Dr. Elena Vasquez stirred from sleep, her dark hair spilling across the pillow as she reached for her robe. All hands to battle stations, came Commander Webb's voice over the intercom. This is not a drill. Drakmari vessels detected approaching the Meridian colony. Marcus was already pulling on his uniform, his mind racing through tactical scenarios. 3 days had passed since their return from the Zephyrian diplomatic station. 3 days during which he and Elena had grown even closer, their relationship deepening beyond professional collaboration into something profound and personal. The Drakmari, Elena said, her voice tight with concern as she dressed quickly. Corvain warned us they would see humans as a challenge, and now they're making their move. Marcus replied grimly, sealing his uniform jacket. Elena, I need you to stay safe during whatever's coming. Your research is too important to risk. She turned to face him, her brown eyes flashing with determination. Marcus Stone, if you think I'm hiding in my quarters while you face this threat, you don't know me very well. Despite the gravity of the situation, Marcus found himself smiling at her fierce expression. The woman he had fallen in love with was brilliant, brave, and utterly unwilling to back down from danger. Then we face it together, he said, pulling her close for a quick but intense kiss. The bridge was a hive of controlled chaos when they arrived. Commander Webb stood at the central console, her gray hair pulled back severely as she coordinated the ship's response. The main view screen showed the tactical display. 12 Drakmari vessels approaching the peaceful agricultural colony of Meridian. Prime, status report, Marcus demanded as he took his position at the weapons console. Drakmari battle fleet dropped out of hyperspace 30 minutes ago, Webb replied crisply. They're not responding to hails, and their formation suggests an attack pattern. The colony has a population of 40,000 civilians. Elena moved to the science station, her fingers flying across the controls as she analyzed the enemy ships. Marcus, look at this, she called urgently. The Drakmari vessels are configured differently than our intelligence report suggested. The tactical display shifted to show detailed scans of the enemy fleet. The Drakmari ships were sleek, organic-looking constructs that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. But what caught Marcus's attention were the modifications visible along their hulls. Those are sensor rays, Elena explained, her voice filled with scientific fascination despite the danger. They're not just here to attack, they're here to study us. War Leader Thane's voice suddenly crackled through the communication system, his words rendered into English by the universal translator. Human vessels, you will prepare for boarding. The Hive Queen wishes to examine the pack hunters who dare to claim territory in our expansion zone. Commander Webb activated the response channel. This is Commander Patricia Webb of the United Earth Federation. The Meridian colony is under our protection. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The response was a sound that could only be described as insectoid laughter. Your threats amuse the Hive Queen. Commander Webb, we have studied your species since your first ventures into our territory. You are pack hunters, yes, but you lack the unity of the hive mind. You are individuals pretending to be collective. Marcus felt Elena's hand slip into his as they listened to the Drakmari leader's words. The touch steadied him, reminding him that they were stronger together than apart. War Leader Thane, Marcus said, stepping forward to address the communication. Directly, you're making a mistake. Humans don't fight as individuals. We fight as something greater. Prove it, Captain Stone, came the chilling reply. Show the Hive Queen the power of your pack coordination. We are curious to see how Apex predators without a collective consciousness wage war. The first Drakmari attack began with a precision that spoke to their hive mind coordination. Energy beams lanced through space, targeting the Endeavor's weapon systems with surgical accuracy. Marcus coordinated the ship's defensive response, his hands moving across the tactical controls with practiced efficiency. Elena, I need you to analyze their attack patterns, he called over the sound of weapons fire. Find me a weakness. She was already working, her scientific mind processing the data streaming across her console. Marcus, they're fighting like a single organism. Each ship knows exactly what the others are doing without any communication delay, which means they'll have trouble adapting to unpredictable tactics, Marcus realized. Webb, signal the colony defense fleet. Tell them to implement Pattern Chaos 7. Commander Webb raised an eyebrow. Pattern Chaos 7, that's an experimental formation based on human pack hunting behavior, Marcus explained, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. Elena's research gave me the idea. If the Drakmari expect us to fight like a hive mind, we'll show them what individual creativity can accomplish. The human ships broke formation, each vessel pursuing its own seemingly random attack vector. To outside observers, it looked like complete chaos, but Marcus could see the underlying pattern. The way each captain was using their individual initiative to create openings for their wingmen. Elena watched the battle unfold with scientific fascination mixed with personal pride. They can't predict our movements, she said excitedly. The hive mind expects uniform responses, but humans are improvising constantly. War Leader Thane's voice returned to the communication channel, but now it carried a note of confusion rather than confidence. Impossible. Your ships move without coordination, yet they achieve coordinated results. How do individual hunters accomplish hive unity? Marcus exchanged a look with Elena, seeing the same realization in her eyes. Because we're not trying to be a hive mind, he replied to the Drakmari leader. We're being exactly what we evolved to be, individual predators who choose to work together. The battle turned in humanity's favor as the Drakmari struggled to adapt to the unpredictable. Human tactics, their hive-mind coordination, so effective against other collective species, became a liability when facing opponents who could think independently, while still maintaining group cohesion. But the victory came at a cost. The Endeavor had taken significant damage, and Marcus could see that several colony ships had been destroyed before the defense fleet could protect them. As the remaining Drakmari vessels retreated, War Leader Thane's final transmission carried a note of grudging respect. "The Hive Queen is intrigued by your species, Captain Stone. You fight like no apex predators we have encountered. This conflict is far from over." As the bridge crew worked to assess damage and casualties, Marcus found a quiet moment with Elena near the observation deck. The stars looked the same as always, but somehow the galaxy felt different now that humanity had faced its first real test. "As a recognized apex predator species, we won," Elena said softly, leaning against his shoulder as they watched the debris of the battle drift past the viewport. "This battle, yes," Marcus replied, his arm tightening around her. "But Thane was right. This conflict is just beginning. The Drakmari won't give up easily." Elena turned in his arms, her face serious but unafraid. "Then we'll face whatever comes next." Together, their kiss was deeper this time, filled with the intensity of two people who had just survived their first battle as a couple. When they finally separated, Marcus knew that whatever challenges the galaxy might throw at humanity, he had found something worth fighting for. The stars continued their eternal dance around them, indifferent to the conflicts of the species that moved between them. But for Marcus Stone and Elena Vasquez, the universe had just become a much more dangerous and precious place.